Hi everyone, I just got off the phone with Nick Dunlap, who is an active board member with the Apartment Association of Orange County. We discussed the new Assembly Bill AB 828, which a lot of owners are contacting us and asking questions about. Here is a recording of the call. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. Today we're discussing AB 828 and COVID-19 updates for apartment owners. On the call today, we've got Nick Dunlap. And a little bit about Nick here. He's a former AAOC president and current board member. Nick's also running for Fullerton City Council, and he is currently a senior vice president of real estate development for Avanath. Nick, thanks for being here and joining us.
Hey, Dan, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You know, there's a lot of news coming out with proposed bills and uncertainty, and we're just really grateful for you to be, joining us, providing your insight on these matters. So thank you.
Hey, thanks. Happy to be here.
So I think the biggest thing that's coming out on the news is just everybody's getting emails about this new proposed bill, AB 828, and a lot of people just are reading the headlines and getting kind of, very worried. If you could, can you just kind of provide the viewers on what AB 828 is, just some of the high level bullet points?
Sure. So it should come as no surprise that, there's either trickery or unfortunate legislation coming out of the Bay Area. But what's interesting is that AB 828 was actually introduced in 2019, originally as a bill intended to protect victims of human trafficking. And so when we first got word that AB 828 had become what's called a gut and amend bill, basically means that, the legislator is taking a bill that was previously introduced, basically changing the content or context of it in order to introduce something that's a little more, opportunistic. And in this case, AB 828 is a bill that would allow essentially an eviction court judge to reduce your rents or discount your rents by 25% and require you to enter into a payment plan for residents who have not paid their rent. And, it's interesting because this is all sort of on the heels of course, the governor's orders where he had issued the initial 90-day eviction moratorium. And then the Judicial Council came out and said, okay, well, we're going to add 90 days to that. So basically kind of a 6-month eviction moratorium. And now this bill actually seeks to push that to January of 2022. So it's very problematic. It's bad for small owners. It's bad for large owners. And again, this is just continued overreach by the legislature, and we need to work together to make sure that we fight and we stop it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, first off, it says reduce rents by 25%. Is that across the board on all your tenants or the ones not paying?
Well, it's exactly. So it rewards bad behavior because essentially if you were to evict or file an unlawful detainer against a resident who hadn't paid and it went to court, the judge would then have the authority to reduce their rent by up to 25% for a period of 365 days, while at the same time requiring them to enter into some sort of a payment plan where, they would make minimum payments of about 10%, over a term. In which case would be paid somewhat back. It doesn't say that you'd be paid in full. And if you do the math, it doesn't work. And what's also interesting is that, Los Angeles, who was pretty much, one of the first cities to come out with a really progressive stance on this, really forbids property owners from entering into payment agreements. And so in this case, it's allowing, eviction court judges to do it for you.
Oh, wow. So, this seems like it could be a slippery slope. What about the tenants that are paying their rent? And then, are they going to be motivated to pay their rent? And
well, I think, look, I think word like this, tends to spread like wildfire. And I think, unfortunately, once people get the idea that, hey, we don't, look, we can go to, we can go to eviction court, we won't get evicted, nothing's going to impact or affect our credit, and we're simply going to have our rent discounted 25%. It's an extreme measure, but why wouldn't somebody want to take advantage of that, and then I guess, the big fear with a lot of this legislation is that, once this gets put into effect and it's in place through 2022, you're going to have a situation where then in 2022 it becomes permanent. Or if it's in place at the state level through 2022, you can have local cities that rush to enact their own sort of legislation as sort of like a spinoff measure that could be, likely worse or more extreme.
I see. What can owners do? I mean, we're trying to keep our buildings full and keep rents coming in, and collections have been on the minds of everybody. And now we got to try to fight this. I mean, what can owners do to be proactive?
So I think the first thing owners need to do is, really realize that this is an opportunity they have to advocate for their own interests. And so they need to pick up the phone. They need to call their legislators. They need to write emails to their legislators. And, you can do that easily online. If you live in Orange County, you can go on to OC Vote and you can type in your address and it'll tell you, legislators, both at the state level, national levels, and also locally, who represents you. And I would encourage you to contact first your assembly member, because it's in the assembly now, but it will likely go to the Senate as well. And so I would also encourage owners to contact, basically their assembly members, their senators, and then from there, just continue to push and apply pressure. Because I think that's what they need to realize is that, especially in a time like this where, many legislators are in their district, home in their districts, they're not in Sacramento. And so I think they really need to realize that, hey, look, these bills that you're trying to push through, because that's, of course, everything, this bill is laced with sort of, incendiary verbiage that's intended to kind of get people fired up. And, I think owners need to get fired up, and owners need to realize that, hey, this is a continued attack on private property rights in California. And you know what? We need to fight, because if we don't fight, we're going to continue to see this overreach. And, it's sending people away from California. It's pushing businesses out of California. And so we need to toe the line and fight.
Absolutely. No, I understand. I mean, there are a lot of headwinds right now. I mean, is it too early to tell if this is the likelihood of this getting passed, or do you think it's going to get watered down and some level will ultimately get passed, at least the payment plans, or what do you think?
The way it's written, I don't see it passing. I mean, it's so extreme. Although, I mean, the legislators have an adage they like to use, and that's never let a crisis go to waste. And so I think that's exactly the case here. Is you have progressive legislators who are pandering for votes and trying to throw business and property owners, under the bus as a result of that. And so I do believe that, our ability to continue to apply pressure, to make comments, to make calls, and let legislators know how bad this is for our interests and how much it will affect us. Every call and every email helps. And I can tell you, through our involvement with the apartment association, we get calls and text messages from legislators or their staffs who say, guys, look, we're a no on this issue, and your people are like lighting our phone lines up, and that's what we like to hear. So, I think that's absolutely what it's going to take. So I mentioned before, the legislature is at recess now. They should be back in Sacramento, like around May 4th, I think. And so that's when we expect this to be heard, sort of that first week of May.
Gotcha. Okay. Good to know. Any other updates on COVID-19 relating to apartment owners? Any new?
Well, I think it's interesting. I mean, if you followed sort of the National Multi-Housing Council research that they've published about collections, I think it's been really interesting to track that in relation to month-over-month collections and also year-over-year. Because I think all things considered, we really haven't seen the impact so much for April. I think it'll be really interesting to see what happens in May. I mean, what's your take?
That's it. May's going to be telling. I think April wasn't so bad. We did a survey, surveyed 15 different apartment owners early in April, just last week. And it was 92% of tenants paid their rent in full. And this was across 15 owners that were either owned a couple hundred units or the mom and pop investors that own 5 to 10 units. We got the broad spectrum. 92% full, paid in full. And then only it was 4% partial payments. And then just a very small percentage of no pay. So we all got through that nicely. There is some concern about
May will really be a telling month, but there's some stimulus money that's come in. Maybe it'll help offset that.
Mm-hmm.
So we got to wait and see. But I think there is some, understanding that it might not be, the percentages might not be as high as April. It could start to drop, and that's the work.
Yeah, no, I think that'll be interesting. And I think, like you said, the fact that people do have the increased, unemployment premiums, and they do have the stimulus money that's come in, it'll be really interesting to see how much of that actually gets used for the important, necessary expenses, right? And, and of course that can, rent, housing, and other. I think one other thing that's important to look at as we look at sort of bills like AB 828, we've got there's some national, there's a lawsuit out of New York where a group of apartment owners is challenging the newest rent control laws that were put in place at the state level. And, we're very closely watching that in California because what we believe is that, rent control and other sort of overreach, such as AB 828, constitutes a taking, which is under the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution, and then also, but that's the, sort of the federal, and then at the, sort of the state level, it would be the 14th Amendment. And so, we're watching that closely because we believe that once that gets kicked up and out of the New York's appeals courts, that we'll have a chance to, potentially defeat that. And that would be a great victory for property owners across the United States, if that's the case, to not have to deal with, sort of the overreach and also the, stringent rent controls that have been put in place in places like, LA, the Bay Area, and New York.
No, absolutely. So aside from AB, the 828 and COVID restrictions that are coming out, you're on the front lines of all this, and it just seems, is there anything else that is on your mind or you potentially see coming, or is it really just tied to these two things right now?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, it's almost as though people just press pause and then we got put into this zone where everybody's focused on, sort of the, COVID-19 response. But, AB 828 is really, consuming everyone's time and efforts right now. But if we were to maybe get back into, life as we know it, we know that, look, we've got the split roll initiative that's going to be on the ballot in November. Now, that doesn't affect apartment owners immediately, but likely will in the future. And I think that it's important for people to realize that, bills like this and the messaging and the way they're sold is a big business. And I think it's something that people, don't necessarily realize, but, there are, consultants and, an industry of people that are making millions and millions of dollars off of trying to sell, these tax increases, to the public. And so I think it's really important to keep that in mind. And whether you don't own commercial property or you do own commercial property, I think it's important to realize the impact that the split roll will have on, the cost of goods and services across, really across any industry in the state. That's kind of the first thing. We also know that Prop 10.2 will be on the ballot. Obviously that's, it went down resoundingly 2 years ago. Then of course they enacted 1482. And now here we are with Prop 10 2.0. And the way I see it is I think they're, the intent of the proponents of this bill, they realize that they've already kind of put the foot on the necks of property owners or apartment owners. And, they realize, hey, there's already rent control in place. So now let's see if we can get something that's more stringent than what's already there. And so, we're hopeful that through really a concentrated effort that we'll be able to educate the public and, that people will realize, hey, this is bad news for everybody. And there's really, this isn't like, hey, apartment owners get punished and the public benefits. I mean, this is something that will truly, really harm the ability to, build new housing and solve some of these long-term affordability challenges that we've been dealing with in the supply-constricted market like California.
I'm with you completely.
Yeah.
It's hard to keep up with all the headwinds right now, and we rely on you, and just everybody's got to keep their ear to the ground, and you're on the front.
Absolutely.
So we really appreciate it. As certainly things come up, as you mentioned, when May rolls around, we'll certainly look at collections and then also any new forward progress with this proposed bill 828.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks so much. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you. We'll talk to you later. Thanks, Nick.
Dan, thanks for having me.
You got it. Take care.